Are you looking for another fun sew? Hi, I'm Jill. Welcome back to my channel. So today I am going to be sewing up the Willow Wristlet or Crossbody by So Majestic. Now Amber has done such a great job with this pattern. It is such a cutie. And I have done the sublimation print. It has got the little houses on the bottom and on the zipper panel. It was such a fun sew. So why don't you grab the pattern? The link is down below. We are sewing this as part of the Sew Marathon Society event today. So do check out the videos that have come before me and the videos that are after, because we will all be making this in so many different ways. Now, if this is the first time to my channel and you like what you see, please do give me a thumbs up or subscribe, because the algorithm apparently really likes it. I'm going to get on and show you how much fun I had sewing this now. So this is everything we need to make our willow. So this one here, I have sublimated the print and pretty much made it as a cut and sew. And I have put a little rainbow rivet in her collar just to make it a little bit different. I was going to do some beading and I thought that might be a little bit over the top. So I have interfaced to the edge and I have put this 3mm or 1/8 of an inch foam over the top because I want that to have a nice little structure. I have also got two of my lining, which is waterproof canvas, and it is the rubbery backed one. And I've cut just a square to have as a pocket. I'm not doing credit card slots in this one. There are some amazing options in the pattern for that, but I'd like to think the little girl this is for will not have a whole lot of credit cards. So then I have done a sublimated print for my zipper panel. So I have joined that in the middle, so that will be on either edge of my zipper panel. I've got two lining. Now that I've put Deckerville Light out of the seam allowance, but I have interfaced as well. And this is my gusset. I have joined my gusset in the middle so that I've got a directional print. I should have joined my sublimation print, but yeah, forgot. So this has got interfacing to the outside and Deckerville out of the seam allowance. And I have got my lining, again, waterproof canvas. I have got some binding. Now I am using this thin webbing for the strap. And so to tie that in, I've done some silver vinyl for my strap connector. Now I've put wide double-sided tape down that to prepare that, because that is a really strong tape and that actually gives it a bit of support. And I've got this little bit here which is completely covered with double-sided tape. Now if your machine doesn't like double-sided tape, I wouldn't do this. That is going to be little pieces I'm going to cut to go over the edge of my strap like that. And I'm using brushed hardware. Now I know that's a little bit strange with my silver, but it will look fine. So I have got my two swivel hooks, my two D-rings, my slide adjuster and two zipper pulls, and I'm going with a silver zip. Now I know some of you are going, that's strange, you can't mix silver and brushed, but I am. This is a fun project, so let's change it up and see how it goes. So we shall get our two zipper panel pieces, linings, zip and D-ring. So we'll start with the D-ring connectors. So take our double-sided tape off and fold that into the middle. Now you can either draw a line down here or you can eyeball it, whatever works for you. So if it's cut at exactly the right size, it will just be definitely in half. So that's it, folded like that. And that's going to be on our D-rings like that. So I'm going to sew down either side of mine, or top stitch down it. Now I'm using Tech 70 thread, and I am on a 4.5 stitch length, and I'm going to sew this just between 1/4 and 1/8. So I'm just going to fold that in half. Cut that. Get my two D-rings. Fold that over the middle. And I'm just going to baste along the edge. So there's our two D-ring connectors. So I'm just going to leave those to one side for now. I'm going to take my two main pieces of my zipper panel, and I'm going to use double-sided tape along the end. Now, because this is waterproof canvas, the double-sided tape does not stick very well. I shall try it. Especially with the sublimated, I find it doesn't stick very well at all. Okay, so we're going to put our zip right side down over the top of that edge like that. Give that a good press down if you're using waterproof or something that the tape doesn't stick to very well. Then I'm going to put another piece of double-sided tape over the top. Now I'm using 3mm, so I'm not actually sewing over it. My machine is okay sewing over it, but let's try and keep it out of our needle as much as possible. And then we're going to take a lining piece, right side down, and sandwich it centered. So we're going to line it up with our ends and center it over the top like that. So we want to make sure all threes are level there and that they're level at the end there. So now I'm going to sew down there. Being on the industrial, I've got a narrow foot on, and I just go as close as my narrow foot will allow. Like that. Then we're going to crease that back or fold that back and fold our zipper panel back. So you can either clip around this edge or you can just hold it in place while you sew it. Sometimes you need to put some pressure on the back just to make sure it comes and meets nice and evenly. So I'm going to top stitch down the zipper edge and I'm going to baste around the edge of it. That gives us a zipper edge like that. Now we want to do the same on the other side. Right, sides together, and it doesn't quite line up, typical. So if you do it from this side, line up the end like that so that it's straight across there. And again, another bit of double-sided tape across the back. And we're lining up our end here again so that these all line up. So we've got lining up there and lining up there. So again, our zipper and our exterior are right sides together with our sandwiching our zip. So now we shall sew down there again at the same seam allowance. I know one of my linings is a bit longer than the other. Okay, and then we open that out. So it can be easier to do the middle first and make sure your ends meet in the middle. And again, we're going to baste around the ear and top stitch down the middle. So I'm going to put my zipper pulls on. Now I'm going to put one on from each end. Now you don't need to use two, you can definitely just get away with one. Now I don't mind the gunmetal on the silver, the brushed on the silver, but I'm not a fan of gold on silver. I don't know why. Okay, so that's our zipper panel. So I'm going to trim down my zip a little bit. I'm going to leave a little bit overhanging. Now we're going to get our D-ring connectors and put them over the middle like that. Now I'm going to leave some down here because I want to add a rivet to the end, and I like mine fairly tight in here, so I'm going to have it so that it's about 3/4 of an inch above and a good, so it's about halfway mine is. So I'm just going to baste those in place. Because it's a small bag, keeping this in tight, obviously you may need to make sure that it's not in your way. I think it looks really cool if it's nice and tight down there and not hanging out. But you can have it however you want. So now we're going to get our gusset and our gusset lining. We want to line that up along the edge of our zipper panel. Now, depending on what zipper or seam allowance you've used, it might not actually meet up perfectly. So you may need to trim down your zipper panel. So we're going to sandwich. We've put that right sides together, and then on the back we're going to put our lining down right side together with the lining, and again line that up in the middle and just put it inside or put it in your clips like that. Now make sure that your D-ring is down and nice and flat out of the way, and we're going to stitch across there at the seam allowance given in the pattern. I use a piece of webbing as a hump jumper all the time because a lot of machines don't like it when you change height. So once I get close to where the zipper tab is going to be, I'm going to fold this up and put it behind. So now I can see my foot starting to raise, so I'm going to put that behind, and that means it's sewing on a level piece. Mine doesn't seem to mind coming down the other side. And that way, you don't get a whole lot of nasty stitches at the back. So now we want to open that out on both sides. Now I'm going to top stitch mine one at a time. So make sure they're down nice and flat and top stitch along that seam. So then we want to bring this side over to meet here. So the other side of our gusset on the other side of our zipper. Take that, then bring this side around into the back so that you've got exterior together and lining together. And again, just fit those into your clips. And I've always got one clip wound the wrong way. And again, we're going to sew down that seam with the same seam allowance. Make sure your D-ring's down at the back. Now we want to open that out like that. So just flip your lining around so that it's right side together. I'm going to do mine from the inside. And pull that out tight and top stitch down that side. So I should have trimmed down my zipper pattern when it was the right way around, shouldn't I? Never mind. I shall trim that down a little bit. Of course, I'm going to cut my basting off. That's okay. I will baste around the whole thing. There you go. Just make sure your zipper pulls are down at the back. So now I'm going to attach my binding to this before we go any further. Now I use cotton bias tape. I make it myself and I normally just fold one end under. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start where the zip is, put it right sides together with my lining, and at this end I'm just going to fold that end up like that. So we're just folding the end. Let's cut that straight so you can see what I'm doing. We're just going to fold that like that and put it on the edge. It's easier to hold it with the other piece on. Never mind. So then we're just going to stretch our binding around. Now, when I say stretch, we're not really stretching it. We're just pulling it firmly on there. Whoops. Because bias has a bit of a give, and we don't want it baggy. We want it to be quite firm. Just makes it much easier to sew at the end. Now just come straight over the top, include it in the clip, and then trim that back about an inch further down, so like that. So you can ease that off the end like that if you want to. So if you wanted to do that so that it's easy, just for the last inch, just bring it in a bit like that and keep that on the edge. But you don't have to do that, it just makes it easier at the other side. Cut it straight so you can see what I'm doing. Open out one end and fold it down like that and put it on the edge. Now the reason I'm joining it at the top is then when you look down into the bag you don't see the join, because if you join at the bottom you can see it inside your bag very easily. This way you'd have to fold the lining back or the bag back at the top of the zip to be able to see it. So again, opening out that end and pulling it around. So I make this with a very cheap bias binding maker. I just cut strips of cotton at quilting weight cotton on a 45-degree angle. And what's this? This is 4 centimeters wide. So it's about just under 1.5 inches. So we're coming over by about 1 inch. Cutting that off. And just let it come off the edge a little bit. So now I'm just going to baste those on. Now you could have basted those on when we did the basting, but I find it easier to do it in 2 separate rows. But please do it with a long stitch so that you're not perforating your fabric more than you need to. So when you fold that over later, that's going to have a nice finish like that on the end. And the other side. now we'll put that aside, and I'm going to get my pocket and a lining. So I'm going to fold my pocket wrong sides together, and I'm going to stitch down either side. I'm going to do this, I'll put my stitch length back down. I'm going to do this at about a 6 mil. Now I'm going to clip that corner off, clip that corner off. So now we'll do the same down the other side. So now we want to turn that through. Just get your fingernail into the corner and give it a good push out. Right, so give it a good tug across the top and baste along the top. Then I'll get my piece of trim. Now I always use 3/4 inch or 20 mil trim along my pockets, and always has to be a non-fray fabric. So put some tape down the middle of that. If you follow my channels, oops, that's on the floor, not my bin, you know I do this with all my pockets now. Just make sure that's nice and even along the top. Put that just under halfway onto your trim, like that, and then fold that to meet there. Now you're folding it tight over the edge of your pocket. Push it down on both sides. And now we want to sew down the edge of that trim. Keep it within the edge of the trim, don't sew out here because we're going to trim those pieces off. Run your scissors up the side and trim any excess off. Like that. So now we're going to put that in the middle. Now this is getting fairly close to my edge, but I think it will be okay. So I'm just going to center that and sew around it in place. There's our little slip pocket. So now we're going to get our exterior and our lining, and we're going to baste those together. Like that. Again, put your stitch right up. That's all basted, and we'll do the same with the other one. So that's our back and our front and our gusset. So now we want to mark our centre points on our gusset. So line up the top and the bottom. Now we've got our centre marks on these on the peak, but I'm just going to cut them anyway. Just give them a slight nick on the top. Now if it's easier, you can come around on the corners and just cut some very slight nicks in like that, just around the corner area. Now if you do this, keep them within the 1/8 of an inch. Now if you want to staple this or tape it or do some other way of joining it, you can. Now if you've done a print, make sure it's up the right way. So my zipper's at the top and so is my little girl. That is going there. So I'm going to staple my corners. So I'm going to keep them in place, if I can see that one. So that's there and there. Because I get the feeling if my corner's not exactly right, it's not going to look good. So I'm going to do a couple of staples on either side. Oh, and that's too far in. Now I don't usually use my stapler. Now you want to put your staples through from the flat side so that you're not scratching your machine bed. A tip from Kim from KiteCo Designs, who makes all these amazing circle bags. So now we can sew around there. Make sure you put your stitch back down to your construction length. And I'm just going to hold it down out the way like that and stitch around, making sure that I'm not getting on my staples, and they should definitely be within the seam allowance. Right, like that. Then we can just take our staples out. So we've taken our staples out. So what we're going to do before we carry on is give this a slight trim down. Now we're not trimming it to cut the seam down, we're just tidying up any bits that are overhanging that look a bit untidy. Just to take a bit of thickness out the seam as well. Right, so now we want to lift our lining up and over the edge, like that. Our binding, sorry, keep our binding over the edge. Now I should have joined it on the flat, shouldn't I? Never mind. I'm going to roll that down a bit and clip it around there. So you can just roll it down if it's a little bit too big. Now I'm going to be sewing this from this side. And of course, with this bag having a peak at the top, it would have been better if it was joined on the side. So all we're going to do now, so normally you have a nice clean seam around there, is sew around there within the seam allowance. Just shy of the seam allowance. That is our binding. So now we shall attach our other side. Now I haven't got any staples left, so we'll see how we go with just clipping it. So again, the top, lining it up with the center. Is that all sewn in place? Again, trim up the ends or the edges a little bit. Check your corners, make sure nothing's all puckered, and lift your binding over the edge. So now we're just going to sew around there again. Squishing down our bag as we need to. So that is our little bag with all our binding on it. So let's push it through. So I'm just going to get my fingers in the bottom, push my corner in, and just start pushing it in. Now get your hand right into your corners and push those out. That is so cute. So what you can do is roll that down and put some clips on it overnight, and it'll definitely hold that. Right, so I'm going to put a rivet in here. Now, sometimes I do it beforehand, but I actually wanted to do it through my lining and everything. So I'm going to put a rivet in here. So because this is for a little person, I have cut my strap just over 1 metre, but let's see exactly. About 1.15 m, so that I can turn it under. I've got my little piece of vinyl and I've cut that at about 3.5 centimetres, 35 mil. So I'm going to take the double-sided tape, it's completely covered with double-sided tape at the back. I'm going to sit that on it and fold that right over the middle like that. So it's completely sealed in the end. I'm going to do that on both sides. So with one of those, I'm going to put that up and down through my centre of my slide ring like that. And I'm going to sew around that box. Now you don't have to sew it, you can just rivet it. It is entirely up to you. So I've sewn a box around that on the inside. Now I'm going to take the other end, keeping it nice and flat. I'm going to get a swivel hook, put it through the swivel hook, up and through my strap, down the other side, like that. Make sure that's not twisted at all. Back through the other side, line that up at that end. Now you can use a bit of double-sided tape. This side's a little bit more obvious if it's not exactly perfect. and line it up on your strap. Again, I'm going to sew a box around there. Okay, so that's our strap. All done. And I shall go put my rivets in there and rivets in my bag, and I shall be back to show you it all finished. So there is our cute as a button little willow wristlet. I've put the rivets in the strap and the rivets down underneath to give that a bit more strength. That is such a suit pattern. That is such a cute pattern. Isn't it gorgeous? Thanks, Amber. That is really cool. So if you've liked what you've seen today, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. And thanks for watching.